Thank you, Lex. Let me respectfully stand on all due and existing protocols. In agreement with my belief in the primacy of gratitude among virtues, please allow me to begin today with the word of gratitude. I'm most grateful to Chatham House, Dr. Ellis Vines, and his team for the global impact of their mission and commitment to engagement with nation building in Nigeria. In providing this global platform to interrogate the vision of those seeking to lead Nigeria at this time with clear existential threats, as I will discuss shortly, are pervasive across our dear country. This Chatham House event challenges us to a new thinking. We have an alarming insecurity that has led to loss of many lives and properties, significant decline in food and economic output, immense trauma that has compromised the mental health of communities, and in some cases, identity pressures and disaffection with the Nigerian project. The economy is in crisis, with a troubling debt profile worsened by oil theft of proportion once hard to imagine. 2 economic recessions in 6 years and lamentable power sector that have significantly constrained manufacturing and social life. The Nigerian state is captive to an elite gang-up and a rentier political economy that concentrated power in hands of those who came to power and influence mainly through their own contrivances and influence rather than affirmation of the people, and therefore do not have the incentive to serve the people. Even after exploiting the ethnic and religious cleavages, sentiments to ascend to political power, the very people on whose sentiments they grab power often become the primary victims of such political fraud that has rendered Nigeria a failing state with worsening leadership crisis. Consequently, Nigerian democracy has been on the wane, evident in Afrobarometer longitudinal tracking, which reveals low voter turnout. But this seems to have turned around dramatically last year, allowing independent National Electoral Commission to register over 12 million new voters, with many more complaining they wish to register, but unable to do so due to an INEC deadline. What prompted this turnaround? We may ask. The reason for these very high stakes are lurking in the face of demographics, with our dominant population, the youth, frustrated and unhappy with the status quo and diminished opportunities in Nigeria in an age of globalization, when internet can easily reveal to them prosperous homes of those who live in a better led and governed countries. How did we, Nigeria, plunk or get here in such an economic decline that we have overtaken India as a home for the biggest pool of absolute poor in the world, when there are 7 times our population? While the poverty rate in India is 16%, that of Nigeria is 63%, with 133 million people classified as multidimensionally poor. This is unacceptable and needs to change. What Nigeria needs is a great escape. As 2015 Nobel Prize winner in economics, Angus Deaton of Princeton University, elucidated that what separates poor and rich nations is attributed to health and education. But what provides quality health and educational system for a society? Committed and focused leadership that can build and sustain public wealth, as I was told by Professor Donald Jacob of Kellogg School of Management. In many ways, this is the heart of my remarks today, which are deeply rooted in my upbringing, particularly my mother's counsel, that I live a life of positive impact and manage both personal and public resources most prudently for the sustainable, inclusive growth of development of the society. It is this principle that guided my stewardship as governor of Anambra State of Nigeria and led to our much commended performance with some prize awards to show for it. Some awards for outstanding accomplishments in key Millennium Development Goals, now Sustainable Development Goals. It is the same counsel and principle that is guiding and motivating me to offer to serve in a new Nigeria. The answer lies in leadership, institution, and demographics. The good news is that the demography is driving the change we're seeing in Africa. With election after election last year in Africa, in which establishment parties are being upturned by new and small parties. It is this change that my vision of policy change and institutional development is rooted in a push for a broadened scope of social mobility and freedom for Nigeria, particularly for the youth and women. Like the former British Prime Minister, Harold Macmillan, said, at the start of the independence decade, a wind of change is blowing across Africa. Today, that new wind of change sees the ballot box as being instrumental to changing of bad leadership. Senator Yusuf Dat Ahmed, my running mate, and I are committed to new politics that start with ethics of servant leaders and anchored on marriage of clean hearts and skillful hands. We know that unless we change the politics by changing the political leadership, we are stuck in this terrible state of underdevelopment and misery. We will build patriotically our institutions, particularly the ones directly responsible for implementing government policies, to make them fit for purpose. It is not to be doubted at the global scene that Nigeria is blessed with some of the most entrepreneurial youths in the world, in science, in business, in art and entertainment. We believe that what remains is the changing of leadership class, from predictors to creators of value, from those whose wealth and power drive from the destruction of the nation and its people to those who have demonstrated competence, character, capacity to invest in human development, create prosperity, and instill right values and ethical conduct deserving of servant leaders. Nigeria today is at a critical juncture, and the people led by the youth, brutalized by bad leadership, are awake and leading the movement to transform Nigerian politics and restart the engine of economic growth and social stability. We count ourselves honored to be trusted, especially by the youth, to lead this democratic revolution, and we are deeply pledged to do so with sincerity, accountability, and unquenchable love and desire for a better Nigeria. We are simply the symbol of Nigerian youth struggle to reverse this ugly trend that keeps driving them into social anomia, despair, and rejection of their country. We are determined to do everything that needs to be done to rescue and lead our country to prosperity, freedom, security, and peace. We will use merit to assemble competent Nigerians from all sections of Nigeria to form effective government of national unity. At the heart of my goal here today is to look at our Labour Party's key policy plans and how they will drive up the quality of life of average Nigerian, dramatically reduce poverty, and return Nigeria to a place of strategic relevance in a world that needs a thriving and well-governed Nigeria, stabilizing the continent of Africa, making it high-value add for a planet impaired by environmental challenges, terrorism, and inequity. I also plan to speak on institutions and how the leadership we offer can facilitate the evolution of stronger institutions with the rule of law a key anchor to nation building in Nigeria. I have no doubt that the policy choice we favor and the strong institutions Labour Party will facilitate will move Nigeria from a country of rent seekers sharing oil receipts and consuming conspicuously to the one that produces based on vast factor endowments whose value chains can move us towards a high employment economy. We will turn our youth budge to a democratic dividend rather than today's harvest of time bomb of violence, insecurity from uneducated, unemployed, and marginalized youth. This forms the first and most important thrust of our government priorities, without which the rest will not be achieved, to secure Nigeria, end banditry and insurgents, and unite our dear nation to manage our diversity such that no one is left behind. The growing insecurity you see in Nigeria today is not because the enemy is formidable. It is not a lack of focused leadership, ineffective security government structure, and poor coordination from the center. All this needs to be addressed by first projecting strong leadership, signal that will allow both state and non-state actors to be mobilized around single vision. Then by pursuing a robust reform of the security governance structure, coordinating mechanism that assures all levels of government, federal, state, local, with three-level policing are aligned with strong collaboration with partners from both private and development groups to provide required services and deliver results for every Nigerian. Once this is done, it is important to have a single, clear, coherent, consistent development process. It is important for institutions to be able to provide strong leadership, coordination, capability, partner and engage collaboratively with all relevant stakeholders in an environment that mutually reinforces values. The second plank of our policy thrust is to shift emphasis from consumption to production by running a production-centered economy that is driven by agrarian revolution and export-oriented industrialization. With about 70 million hectares of arable land, we will pursue an agricultural revolution through proper segmentation of Nigerian to activate and harness factor endowment of different parts of the country for both rapid and mechanized agricultural development and as a pillar for Nigerian other sectorial development and industrialization. We will incentivize and invest in an agro cluster and industrial cluster development across our geo-resource zones to take advantage of agglomeration and scale effects, of particularly in the northwest, northeast, and north central regions of Nigeria. We would dredge both River Niger and River Benue, build dams massively to support planting of economic trees across the country for local usage, poverty elimination, export and revenue generation. A key task is to sequentially but decisively dismantle the inefficient and anti-market distortionary structures restraining the Nigerian economy from creating a precondition for a dynamic pro-market economy. We will employ entrepreneurial governance to dismantle impediments to free trade and ease of doing business, and implementing radical economic policies that will drastically reduce our debt service, a major drain to the government revenue as it is today. Our micro, small and medium scale enterprises will be robustly supported. Further borrowing must be strictly for productive purposes and not for consumption. While we aggressively pursue the activation of all opportunities in oil and gas value chain, we will target incentive schemes that will be professionally administered to diversify our non-oil export portfolio with proper consideration and management of climate change risk and opportunities. The third pillar of our government priorities is to restructure the polity through effective legal and institutional reforms to entrench rule of law, aggressively fight corruption, reduce the cost of governance, and establish honest and efficient civil service. Reducing costs of governance in Nigeria is an effective way of fighting institutional corruption. In addition to reducing the cost of governance and streamlining government operations for efficiency and effectiveness, we will ensure that reforms we pursue will not in any way affect the livelihood of our hardworking and efficient civil servants. Critical to fighting corruption, we will install a new budgeting system founded on a cardinal principle of public accountability, objective setting, and program implementation. This is against the extant budgetary principles of revenue mobilization, expenditure allocation, borrowing without emphasis on monitoring, evaluation, and feedback. We will enforce principles of performance, auditing, institutionalized monitoring and evaluation process of the entire public service delivery as the primary means of actualizing our vision of the new Nigeria. This reform will institutionalize our personal involvement of both the President and the Vice President in setting budgetary objectives of MDAs and monitoring, evaluating the implementation process through Office of Regulatory Review in the Office of the President. Budget monitoring and evaluation capacity will be strengthened within the Presidency. We will embark on effective micro and physical restructuring to quickly restore physical viability by discontinuing unaffordable subsidies which have left a black hole in government finances. Fiscal and monetary policy will be properly coordinated with each conventional tool transparently instead of distorting markets in favor of privileged few. For instance, an avoidance of doubt. We will collaborate with Central Bank of Nigeria for a transparent liberalization of our foreign exchange market and dismantling of OPEC multiple exchange rates. regime which effectively subsidizes few privileged persons. We will seek to boost the supply side rather than continuing to concentrate exclusively on demand management of foreign exchange. When unaffordable subsidies are removed, some carefully calibrated transfers will be used to cushion adverse impact on economically weak. If the competitiveness of the sector is to be enhanced, then we will do so via enactment of transparent and specifically target fiscal and trade policies designed to stimulate investment and growth. Revenue shortfalls and leakages such as oil theft will be dealt with decisively by holding persons in position of authority fully accountable. The fourth plank of our governance priorities is to leapfrog into the fourth industrial revolution through application of scientific technological innovation to create digital economy. Building on the gains of agriculture-led manufacturing and export, we will pursue development of knowledge and skills to leverage on the emerging disruptive digital technologies, automation, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, robotics, virtual reality, blockchain technology, biotechnology, and data science, all of which are the heart of the fourth industrial revolution. The fifth plank of our government priorities is to build expansive infrastructure for efficient power supply, rail, road and air transportation, and pipeline network through integrated public-private partnership and entrepreneurial public sector governance. Our solution to the perennial power problem in Nigeria is comprehensive and is well covered in our manifesto. We will ensure that we deal with the issue of transmission, distribution. However, we will immediately complete the 2.3 billion Nigeria Siemens network improvement deal to achieve a stable 7,000 by the end of this year, 11,000 megawatts by 2024, and 25,000 megawatts by 2025. We will support local manufacturing capacities and power technologies and encourage and expand local R&D in universities, training centers, and workshops, through which many jobs will be created. Our sixth priority program is to enhance human capital development of our youth for productivity and global competitiveness through investment in education, in research, quality health, and entrepreneurial education. The World Bank Human Capital Development Index ranks Nigeria 168 over 173. To move Nigeria right to the top bracket of the index, we will pursue a Marshall Plan type program on education that incorporates compulsory technical and vocational skills, sports, entrepreneurship, programming, digital skills from primary to secondary school level. In line with this commitment to transform our educational sector, we will prioritize funding of this critical sector. Our tertiary institution will be remodeled to serve as hubs and centers of research, development, and commercialization of ideas for quick industrialization of Nigeria. Finally, our seventh priority is to conduct an Afrocentric diplomacy that protects the rights of Nigerian citizens abroad, advances the economic interests of Nigerians, and Nigerian businesses in a changing world. In concluding, let me say that the problem with Nigeria is at once complex and simple. It rests on leadership. As our erudite Professor Chinua Achebe stated, the trouble with Nigeria is simply and squarely a failure of leadership. In Achebe's view, there's nothing basically wrong with Nigerian character. The Nigerian problem is the unwillingness or inability of his leaders to rise to the responsibility, to the challenge of leading in the front by example, which is the hallmark of true leadership. When people of competence, character, commitment, compassion take over the leadership and pursue their mission and tasks with seriousness required, a new Nigeria characterized by peace, unity, prosperity, inclusiveness will be achieved and sustained. That is what's driving Dati, Baba Ahmed, and I to join to offer to lead this desire and crusade of Nigerian, particularly the youth, for an inclusive and sustainable Nigeria that works for all. In line with my upbringing